Good evening. Most of you are awake. That's a good thing. Welcome. It's good to have you here tonight. It's been some time since we gave a detailed update on the work in Belize, and so it's exciting to do that tonight. How many of you have been to Belize, to the mission specifically? I'm just curious. Oh, wow. So, good. Probably close to 75%. So, that's great. So I'm decided I'm going to start out with maybe a little bit of history, and to tell you the truth, when some years ago the board had asked if I would do PR work, I guess, for Belize and go around to churches and do some talks. I've done a couple of those, and I started looking into the history of how the mission started and how it came about, and so I did some digging because I didn't personally know. So tonight, some of you are possibly more familiar with this than I am, and so if some of these happenings, how I describe this mission starting, are not correct, I would love to have the correct information. So some of you that have been around a few years, I would welcome some input. So as I understand it, Sarasota Mennonite Church in Florida began the mission years ago, and does somebody know approximately when that would have been? I'm thinking 80s? Does somebody know? Larry, do you have any idea? Or Ira? In the early 90s. Late 90s. So that would have been about the time that our churches took it over. I have down 1996 is when Sarasota, I think, came to Bethel and Sandy Ridge, and they wanted to be relieved of the work there, and so they asked if our churches would take that on. And so I have down 96 is when our churches assumed leadership there at the mission. So Sandy Ridge, Bethel, and North Liberty, which was the branch off of Sandy Ridge, assumed leadership at the mission. And I'll maybe we'll start out by showing you, in case you are not familiar with where Belize is, most of you are, but Belize is under Mexico and right next to Guatemala. So the red right there is Belize, Guatemala is the border here, and right here is the ocean right beside it. And so specifically our mission then is located right here. And so you fly into Belize City. That's the main airport in Belize, and come over here to San Ignacio is where the mission is located. And I would say that's a hour and a half. Arlen, you guys were just down there recently. I'm trying to remember. Probably 2 hours, probably closer to 2 hours to the airport. It depends on the traffic and how much construction is going on. But the roads have drastically improved from the late 90s. I was down years ago when Adrian's family was living there, and it was a real trek to get from San Ignacio to Belize City, several hours. And so I would say it's probably about half the time now of what it was back in the late 90s. So in San Ignacio, we have a mission house, a compound, and then also a church and a school. And operating the United Christian Mission are, of course, Bethel and Sandy Ridge, and then New Life Fellowship, Light of Truth in Ohio, and the Traverse Bay Church up in Michigan. And the leadership is configured of, we call them board members and representatives. And so the board members are considered those from the local churches. The representatives are from the Ohio churches and the Michigan church. So the board members from Sandy Ridge, Johnny Miller, Kendall Burkholder, David Miller, and Brian Bontrager. Welcome on, Brian. It's good to have you part of the board. From Bethel would be Daryl Hirschberger, Myron Zimmerman, and Derek High. Derek was the new one that was just voted on last week. And then our representatives from Ohio or from Michigan is James Weaver and Paul Yoder and Wayne Wangard from Ohio. So what is the purpose? The mission statement of United Christian Mission is, the purpose of United Christian Mission is to follow Christ's command in Matthew 28:19 and 20, which says, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen." And so that's our focus, is to evangelize and to do that in different ways at the mission. So I'll give you a little bit of description of our staff. This year we have 2 couples and 3 singles. So Tim and Sarah Ballman are the one couple. They live in town at the townhouse, for those of you who are familiar with the 2 separate compounds. He teaches in school, is the business administrator, so he takes care of the finances and things down there, and helps with maintenance and various things like that. So Tim and Sarah, and Bradlin, can't think of his last name now. Bradlin Wagler from South Carolina, teaches the upper grades in school, and he's the only single guy there this year, which is not typical. Usually we'd have 2 single guys. Rachel Gingrich from Leon, Iowa is personal worker, and so she takes care of domestics at the house for the girls, and also focuses on reaching out in the community there to girls specifically, and also just to children and helping with kids club and stuff. Leanne Fisher is from Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, attends Weavertown, and she's the kindergarten teacher, has been there 3 years, and she's terminating this year. Rachel's also terminating, and then Craig and Becca Steiner from Holmes County, and their 2 boys, Jotham and, I always forget his name, Jesse. Jotham and Jesse. So Craig serves as administrator, also principal of the school, and administrator at the mission. And they have been there, I think, 6 or 7 years, and are terminating this year. So we have a lot of staff turnover this year, which always makes it interesting. So one of our primary focuses right now is the school. Here's a picture of the school building, and this is on the main compound with the administrator's house up here in the corner. And so on this property we have the administrator's house, the school, and the church. And I'll show you the church here in just a little bit. So we have grades kindergarten through 12th grade in this building. Kindergarten room is right over there on the end. And just a note for those of you that maybe haven't been down recently or are wondering what this is all about, that's one of our wonderful additions since COVID. So as the students come in every morning, they're required to wash their hands there, or they used to be. This may have changed now. They would wash their hands, and Mr. Craig would take their temperature, make sure everybody's good to go into school. That allowed them to go in and begin classes. And so we added a washing station there. Maybe a few facts about Belize. What does Belize consist of? There's a lot of different people in Belize. 50% of them are Spanish, 22% Creole, then Maya, 10%. Garfuna, 5%, Russian Mennonite, 4%, Chinese, 1%, and then other. I'm assuming we Mennonites would probably fit there in that other category. And so there is a lot of different people in Belize. The languages of Belize: English speaking are 63%, Spanish 57%, Creole 45%, Maya 11%, and 8% other. English is a primary language, and you can get by with English quite well. Where we're located, because of the close proximity to Guatemala, there are a lot of Spanish-speaking people there in the area. So it is advantageous to know Spanish, but when we go down to visit, you can get by with English. But a lot of our staff will often take Spanish lessons just to interact better with some of the school parents, especially. Some of the parents maybe wouldn't speak the best English, but for the most part, you can get by with English. Different religions, by large, 33% are Catholic, Protestant 26%, Pentecostal, Seventh-day Adventist, Mennonite 3% is the little sliver you see there, and other 8%, 12% none. So a lot of different religions, and there are a lot of churches even in the town there where we're at. It's a lot like the States. There's a lot of different kinds of churches. Some of the issues that are in Belize, there's a lot of gang activity, drug trafficking. I had done some research on just crime and drug stuff in Belize, and they're rated, I think, in the top, it's under 5 for dangerous countries in the world. And so there is a lot of drug trafficking and stuff going on. But I will say it's probably in small pockets. And so Belize City, some of the larger cities would have more of that type of thing going on. Where we're located, probably not as much so. I mean, it's not considered dangerous, but yet we try to tell our single staff especially to stay together when they go out evenings. If they go out in a group, and not just have a bunch of ladies go off by themselves or something like that, just for safety issues. So there's crime, corruption, and broken homes and witchcraft. And we see a lot of that, especially in the school, broken homes and even some witchcraft happening. It's interesting when you go to town, there are a lot of stores run by Chinese people, and actually Chinese restaurants in town there too. And so it's interesting when you go into those Chinese stores, and they're kind of like a mini Walmart. I mean, there'll be a grocery store and dry goods and just kind of whatever you need. And in the back of the store, I'll often find there'll be a altar in the back, just at the end of the one aisle, with all kinds of candles, and you can tell they burn their incense and stuff there and do their worshiping there in the store. And so there is a lot of stuff like that going on, a lot of evil also. The town that we're located in is Santa Elena. San Ignacio is the large town, and I'll explain that here. There are 2 towns that were separated by a river, and they're called twin towns, San Ignacio and Santa Elena, and they've kind of merged into one now. And so when you go from one town to the other, you don't really notice a difference. They kind of run together. There's a river dividing the two. It's very close to the Guatemalan border, has 18,000 people, and like I said already, or maybe you've picked up in the different types of people there, it's very diverse. A lot of different cultures coming together there. It's also an economic center and a tourism hub. And so you have a lot of people, you come across a lot of people traveling. They're there for vacation and to enjoy the beautiful scenery that Belize has, taking touring and things like that. Our focus is now primarily the school, and it's a kindergarten through high school, and we have a variety of children from the community. There's some Chinese children, there's some Spanish children, there are some children from church also attending, and so it's an interesting mix. This past year we had 50 students and 7 faculty. Most of the students there are, I would say, in grades 8 and 9 and under. A lot of them will go up to about grade 8 or 9, and they either drop out or they'll go to a government-run school because they plan to go to college or something. And so there are a few in the upper grades, but most of them are in the lower grades. Here's a picture of the school, and this is an older picture. Some of these pictures I've struggled to update the last couple of years because we weren't having in-session classes. A lot of it was done remotely. So this is a picture from 2019, 2020, and a picture of the teachers with the students. They all wear uniforms, so hopefully royal blue is your chosen color if you're a teacher. Here's a picture of the teachers. Craig Steiner in the back, the principal. Leanne, I had said earlier, is the kindergarten teacher. Hugh Dell is from Scotland. He interesting, he's been teaching now, he teaches third and fourth grade. I think this is his second or third year Hudell is in his 50s, used to teach at a government school, was principal at a government school for 15 years. He actually is a accredited teacher, went to college for it. Very, very sharp man. He's bishop at the Beachy Church in Scotland, and so he's one of the ministers there. So it's been good to have him on board. Bradlin Wagler, Timothy, and then two girls from Spanish Lookout, Jody and Myrna, are teaching. And one of them, I always get them mixed up, the two names. Glendora, there you go. Jody's second grade and Myrna is in first grade. You know, I see their names, but we're not with them enough to make relationships, I guess, to keep their names separate. So one of them is staying and one of them is leaving this next year, so there'll be some turnover there. I'll take you through a typical day at school. At 6:45, the staff meet for devotions. And you wonder, well, why so early? Our school day runs on a half day, and so by 12:15 or 12:30, I think, school is over. So staff meet at 6:45 for just a meeting and having devotions. And at 7:15, the rest of the school students show up. And I should say this is typical school. So in the last 2 years, this has varied quite a bit. But this is typically when school's in full session, which I think they are pretty much back to normal now. 7:15, they have devotions. 7:30 to 12:15, they have classes. Several pictures here. Here's Timothy helping one of the students in the, I think it's 5th and 6th grade. Another picture of, I think it's first grade students. And here's a picture in the kindergarten room. So this would be the little building that I pointed out right behind the school. It's always interesting to go into that room and see all their energy. From 9 o'clock to 9:20 and 10:45 to 11 o'clock, they have recess. And there's a basketball court there. They play basketball and football, or what we call soccer, and just different activities. And then at 12:15, they say their goodbyes, and it allows the teachers some time to help students that need help and prepare for the next day, and to score tests for the that were taken that day. Here's some more pictures of the students leaving, going out the front gate to their rides. And then after school, the teachers finishing up and grading and doing whatever all teachers need to do for the following day. So afternoons, that allows the teachers some freedom to spend time studying, preparing for the next day. Sometimes there are some history classes that are taught after the dismissal, class preparation, and then also it gives them a time for visitation. We encourage our teachers to go out and visit homes. Their students go to their students' homes and visit with them and interact with them. And then there's also just general maintenance that needs to be done. Seems like there's always something to fix and repair and grass to mow. There's a hill up on the side of by the mission house that they chop by hand with machetes, so get to do some manual labor too. And then also just spending time with children. It seems like when the gate is open, the children tend to come in. And I think this picture here was maybe taken at a kids club night, because there's quite a few there. But typically when the gate's open, the children will come in and call for one of the girls or somebody to come out, and they'll spend time with them. Special events. This is an outing that the school had. They went on a field trip, and maybe it looks like he's worried there, but he's actually enjoying the snake. I'm not sure I would enjoy that, but that's a big snake. Christmas programs at church for the families and also for the church people to attend. Here's some pictures of them singing. and then also 8th grade graduation. One of the things that they do every year is they have they call it a Children's Day, and it's kind of like our track and field would be. And so it's at the end of school, and they get together, and you can see they're kind of in different colors, and they do different competitions and play together. And this year, I guess they were lining them up for a picture. This picture was taken actually several years ago, as you'll see here. And as they were lining up, we had two of the staff were getting ready with a surprise for them. That's Galen up there on the left. I'm not sure if you can see or not, but Galen and Myra's husband, Jeff. So they got them all lined up, and then they dumped water on them. It spread them pretty quickly. So maybe you say, well, why United Christian School? Why not other schools? There's actually a school right out in front of our school. Why put all the effort into having a school in Belize and supporting it? And several things that we try to focus on are academics. Often the students, when they test, they place pretty high in the country of Belize. So we're always excited about that they do well in their academics. This picture was taken here in the last year when they were doing remote classes. You can see Leanne is probably on a Zoom call with one of her students. And that was a challenge for our teachers. I'll tell you what, it was really hard for, especially for, we had at least one that was a new teacher, came down, two of them actually, new teachers that came down and went right into remote learning. And so you don't know your students, you don't know their tendencies, you don't know their work habits, and this is how you're trying to do school. And often at home there wasn't a lot of support, especially some of the families, from the parents to make sure the work gets done. So the parents would come in and they would grab these folders with the work for their students, take it home, their students were supposed to complete it, and then they would bring it back to be scored and pick up the next packet to take home. And so just a major headache to do school like that, and just not ideal. Our school, Mr. Craig says, was one of the first ones that went back into a hybrid of in-class learning. So I think they divided the students in half, and part of them would come 2 days a week, and the other half would come 3 days. And then there were some families that were hesitant and didn't want to come at all, so they still did remote learning. But we did, I think he kind of made the next year, this last year, some of those that didn't want to come into school anymore, I think they maybe went on to another school, because we just encourage them, if they can't come in, to try something else. So just less than ideal. I mean, we think it's not ideal here, but in the situation there, it just really made it hard to teach. I'm not sure how much the students really learned unless they were wanting to learn. Another thing is the spiritual teaching, trying to instill truths in the students through Bible classes and just teaching good character qualities. Friendship, spending time together, playing together, and that was one of the things that really lacked the last 2 years with COVID. The other thing is teaching good character qualities. The teacher on the left there, you didn't see him earlier, he was an intern that was he was from Spanish Lookout and studied at Faith Builders. And after they go through the teaching program, they go somewhere to do an internship. We had one, Mr. Lehman, several years ago at UCS. And so he came and did his internship at our school. And so we were excited to have him there for 6 weeks. I think his goal was then to go teach at Spanish Lookout. So that was a good experience. Also discipling and just interacting with the students and trying to teach more than just academics. I would say school is probably our primary focus right now. Secondary focus is United Christian Church. This building was actually built while Lyle and Cammie were down there. So Lyle has stories about building that building. And Lyle, how many times did the front doors walk off? Twice. They had nice new front doors on, and they'd come down and somebody had stole the front doors off. So I think you just made those finally, right? once Lyle built good solid ones, they couldn't carry them off, I think was probably the deal. So they're still on there. The building off to the right there was the restroom, and that was added several years later. Yeah, so the church was built in 2005. The first service was held. Membership, I'm not sure exactly how many members are there. Attendance is 60 to 70 people. And now, about a year ago, they started an outreach church in Spanish Lookout. And so there's about 25 that have went to Spanish Lookout, 20 or 25 attending over there, and 60 to 70 here at this church. Originally, or for when I got on the board 10 years ago, or I should say even up until 2013, there was no local men in leadership there. And so our administrator was always head pastor at the church and would lead out in Bible school and basically anything that happened at church. He was in charge to facilitate that. In 2013, they ordained Danny Koo, and Danny is now lead pastor at the church. And so he was ordained in 2013. In 2015, 2 years later, they ordained Kenton Plett. He's a deacon. And then in 2018, Luis Landaverde. I'm probably butchering his last name. He's a Spanish guy. So the church, for a long time, there was a group that attended church that spoke only Spanish, and they were kind of proud of that, I think, it sounded like, and they weren't going to learn English, and so we would often interpret as they were preaching. One would preach in English, and somebody would sit in the back of the church with the Spanish people and just interpret. The preacher wouldn't wait on him to interpret, but he would you'd hear him talking to them back there, telling them what they're saying. But now most of those Spanish people have went to the Spanish Lookout Church, so they don't interpret here anymore, but at the Spanish Lookout Church they either interpret or Lewis would preach in Spanish. And so two of the men, Kenton Plett and Lewis, are at the new church, and Danny is here at this church. And so Danny's stretched pretty thin right now with overseeing both churches and leading out here. Here's a picture of Mr. Danny preaching, and then I think a Christmas supper or something that they had last Christmas. And so our role has changed at church, and it's exciting to see that. So now they facilitate VBS, and they take care of the services and organizing Sunday school. And so our administrator and our staff just come along and help. They attend church, and if they're asked to teach Sunday school, they help do that. And if some of our ladies help with sewing days and ladies' outings, but it's not assumed that the mission is doing that. It's now done by the church, and so that's exciting to see that. And I think it's went very well. I think John would attest to that since they've ordained local leadership, it's good. They were very hesitant to ordain somebody locally for many years, but once they did, I think they enjoy it now, and it's been good for the church. It's helped the growth of the church. There's youth activities. Our staff are often involved with that because a lot of the young men that come to youth night aren't Christians or their parents don't attend church, and so often our staff lead out at youth night. Some of the other things that happen as staff, just separate from church even, are just staff meals, staff night, and prayer meeting. And also our staff they have a mentoring program that they've been doing the last several years where the men meet and the ladies meet. So it's always a fine balance to do enough staff functions and activities that the staff learn to know each other well and learn to relate together well. But if they do too much, then they find all their fulfillment in just doing things as staff, and they tend not to reach out to the church people and to the community people. So it's always hard to find that balance. How much do you do that you learn to, or that you create relationships with the staff, but that it doesn't make you so busy that you don't have any energy for other people? Well, maybe a bigger question is, outside of school, is, well, why Belize? What is it why are we drawn to Belize? Why work there? Like I mentioned earlier, there are many broken families. There are two houses. The one house is by the main mission house, or by the main church in the school. The other house is in town. And at the house in town, for years, there's been I say family, but I think it's, is it a sister Vanson with maybe two sisters, or maybe some brothers and sisters that lived across the road there in town that for a long time were just dysfunctional, had children without fathers or fathers that weren't present. And so our staff over the years have interacted with them quite a bit. And at one point, one of the ladies had made a commitment and started coming to church and was talking about becoming a member. And I don't think she ever did, but at least made some commitment, made some direction, made some moves in a good direction. So trying to reach out to broken families. The other thing is witchcraft. Some time ago, there was one of the boys came to school, and as he was sitting in school working, the school teacher was saying he could tell this boy was really distracted. And all of a sudden he said, "Hey, there they are! There they are, out there by that tree." And so the teacher looked out and he said, "Well, I don't see anything. What do you see?" And he said, "Yeah, they're right out there by the tree." And he was seeing spirits and demons, and he had started messing around with some occult things that was in their home. And to him, it was a very real thing that he was experiencing. And so the teachers were able to spend some time with him and just walk him through that and pray with him. But to us, we don't even realize sometimes, I think, some of those things going on because we're so far removed. But for them, it is a real thing. It's how they grow up, and it's the things that they experience. Discipling, not only discipling the school students, but also walking with those who are in church. There's an older couple, auntie and uncle, that John and Esther have learned to know very well. Just an older couple in church that have been very faithful. You don't hear a lot out of them, but they're there. They're consistently there, and they need encouragement. And everybody calls them auntie and uncle. I don't even know what their real names are. Do you know Lyle? John? So, okay. So I think they'll often have you and Esther over for lunch when you're down to visit, and they have some health issues, and so that's exciting too, is to see the church, now that they're on their own, they take care of their needs that are amongst the church people, and they serve those people rather than this mission from the U.S. now helping these medical needs or whatever. The church is better equipped to help and to serve those needs amongst themselves. Opportunities. There are always opportunities at the mission. We need several staff each year. There's opportunities for teachers, for personal worker. This year we were replacing an administrator. I'm excited to say tonight that we have a full staff for this next year. About 2 weeks ago, we were able to fill all our staff positions, so that's exciting. We do have a new administrator, for those of you that know Wendell and Levita Schrock from Michigan. They will be serving as staff administrators, so we're excited about that. We were looking for a couple in that age bracket that can just lead the mission well, and I think Wendell will be helping in the church as needed. So as the church asks him to help, he'll be helping there. Personal workers coming from Pennsylvania, and then we have a new teacher from Indiana, and northern Indiana, Sandy Ridge. I'll let you figure that one out. So we have one of our own going for teacher next year. I'll let her introduce herself. Some of the things that we look for are qualifications: that you are a Christian, of course, and that you have a heart for God, that you desire to serve others, in the mission and in the school and outside of the mission. Have an academic interest. Craig always says you don't have to have teaching experience, but if you have a willing heart, you can learn to teach. Willingness to learn, love for people, being a team player, and be growing in your Christian walk. You know, there's something about us that I think we often think that, well, if I would go on the mission field and then I would be this way, or I wouldn't have this issue or baggage. But fact of the matter is, who you are at Sandy Ridge is who you're going to be in Belize. And so, and that's okay. We all have baggage. Don't get me wrong. We all have our quirks, but it's good to go and be a growing person, a person who's walking in a good direction. And we always trust that the mission can be a stepping stone for our single youth that are there and our couples, that it can be an encouraging time for them to grow in their walk with the Lord. Well, how can you be involved? You're involved in many different ways, and so as I put these up here, I want to thank you for your support over the years, financial, prayer, and also the encouragement. We're always looking for staff. If you have any people that Johnny different times has gotten up and said we need staff, and I'll tell you what, that's how we get most of our staff, is somebody referring somebody to us. And it's probably the toughest part of being on the board for me is recruiting. It seems like from Thanksgiving till about now, you're always in dire straits and looking for help and looking for somebody to go down. Very rarely that we have people volunteer, but I did have one a couple years ago. She's actually there right now. She had come to me and messaged me and said, hey, I have interest in serving. My parents and I lived down there some years ago, and she waited 2 or 3 years. And finally I called her. I said, hey, we have an opening. She said, I'm ready to go. And so it's been good to have her on staff. Staffing is always a tough part of the mission. This is our focus and our purpose as a mission. Our desire is to bring all people to the knowledge of the love of Christ, and that they may be filled with the fullness of God, and to know the love of Christ which passeth knowledge, that ye might be filled with all the fullness of God. And we purpose to accomplish this through preaching, teaching, and evangelism, providing Christian leadership, sending qualified personnel to help in the work of the mission, and to provide financial assistance. Our aim is to establish and oversee a local church, school, and to organize community outreach. In this, we recognize the danger of allowing Native involvement only in a supportive role. We purpose to go beyond that by promoting Native leadership, ownership, staffing, and management wherever possible, until such time that the work becomes indigenous. I always say our goal is to work ourselves out of a job, and so it feels like the church side of it's starting to it's starting to get to that place where we're involved less, and they're taking over that. And our focus now is on the school, and our goal is to somehow involve the church more in some way, that they have some ownership in that. As a board, we discussed, basically, we finance the school and the tuition for most of the students. The tuition, they probably couldn't afford it if we charged them what it actually costs us. So we've tried to figure out how do we lower our costs, and finally, after long discussion, some of the members that have been on the board for a long time, they finally said, well, the way we're doing school, we will probably never get to that point that they can afford it. But we've tried to begin focusing on how can we turn over more leadership and let them assume more responsibility as a church in the school, that we can come along and maybe just help financially, but allow them to operate the school in some fashion. We've not, right now, there's no school board down there. It's run by the board up here and the administrator down there. So we've talked about putting in a local school board, maybe having them help in some ways like that they can catch the vision there. That's all I have on the talk. I'm going to just turn the time over to Johnny and David. They've both served on the board for some years, and I just said, whatever you guys want to share, if you want to stand up and give anything of interest or whatever you care to, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Kendall. I think you did a really good job. I've been going down there. The first time I went down was back when Chris and Ruth were part of the mission. And I remember helping build the school and some of that. And then after that, we went down and helped repaint the school. And I think Vanson was on that trip. And so Belize has a lot of memories. I'm the treasurer of the board, and so I would just like to thank everybody for the way you guys have contributed to the mission financially. We had some extra funds from the church here, and so we're supposed to be getting some more from the church for the mission. And especially with having some local teachers there, it obviously takes some more funds because of paying them a wage. And so I just want to thank the Lord, thank God for just providing the finances, providing the personnel that we need. And it's His work, and we just want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I too just want to thank the church for your continued support. It's one of those things, that like David mentioned, the financial aspect of it, it has been a major blessing the last couple of years. It seems that people have been very, very generous in their giving to the mission, and I want to bless you for that. And it's also very exciting to have, we have a young lady from here that is going to be going down. It is very exciting to have youth from our churches there. It gives you a little bit of a better connection to the mission, and so it gives you, as a congregation, an excuse now to go down and visit the mission. I would highly recommend it. My first time down was when Vanson and Kendra were there, and it has changed a lot since then. It was, I think me and Kendall went down for as board members here, I think it was 2 years ago. And I couldn't believe how much the country of Belize has changed, just for the better. It's not so, I don't know if you call it third world country-ish, but it's paved roads. It really is a beautiful country. It does get hot. That's the only downfall, but it's a place that I would encourage and recommend any of you to go to if you need a vacation. I've never been to the coast, but I hear it's lovely. So. Going and doing that, but also, I know the people at the mission would love to show you around there, and also visiting the church and just seeing what you're supporting. You got a little bit of a glimpse into it with the slideshow here tonight, but this next year looks really. I don't know how else to put it, but exciting. There is going to be a big staff turnover, but it seems we are adding an extra couple. Down there, like David mentioned, we have some different, staffing is going to be a little different this year, which is going to require more funding being sent down. But at the same time, I really do feel that God has been at work, especially with the staff that we have going down there, and just some of the things that have happened, especially even for Wendell's, becoming, being a part of that, just that whole thing for how that all worked when we actually contacted them. It was a pretty cool story. But anyway, God is definitely at work, and I feel that we have a very energetic team going down there, the ones that are there as well. So I know we talked a lot about financials, but I know on the list up there it also mentioned prayer, and that's such a huge part. And that's one thing that we as a congregation can do a lot of. So I would just highly encourage each and every one of you to put that on your list. Pray daily for the work down there. Like Kendall had mentioned, it's been a rough couple years with COVID and some of that stuff, and things have it weighed on the staff, and we heard it from them. It was difficult. It really was, and so it's just it's a blessing that things are kind of opening up again, that we can have school. School is kind of the main thing there. So developing those relationships with the kids, that is huge, and also our staff being able to go out and visit. So, I want to again just thank the church here and all the supporting churches for being used in that way financially, and also just in your continued prayers for the mission there. It's very needed, and hopefully, yeah, we can this next year things can go on without without a hitch. We do have a lot of staff turnover, but I just want to say thank you to you as a congregation, and Lord bless you.
You mentioned prayer. I will just fill you in a little bit. Here in the last year, there have been several times where there have been men that they saw or the neighbor saw on our side of the fence close to our mission house. And the neighbor's a policeman, so one night he took a couple pot shots at him and shone his light. And so there has been some, so far we haven't had any, I don't think we have any theft in the last several years, but we know there's been people close. When we were down to visit I think it was the last fall or this spring, there was a drunk guy that tried to jump over the fence and impaled his arm. Like he ran the top of the fence is steel, and he ran it right through his arm, and they ended up hauling him into the hospital, and he basically stuck. He got stuck and couldn't get up, and they had to lift him up and get it out of it, strip him off of the fence. And so we weren't sure why he was coming. I'm not sure he knew what he was doing, because he was either drunk or high on something. So they need your prayers. Pray for them. I don't normally do this on a presentation. I will give you just a couple pictures of our personal trip as a family. We went in February to visit Glendora's brother. And in Belize, you're allowed to do this, and it's not a problem. So our children always like to ride on the back of the truck. And so that was my brother-in-law's truck. Jansen and Monica, so for those of you that don't know, Glendora has a brother, Jansen, that served at the mission, and now they live down there as a married couple and attend the church. He bought some property, and this is the house they built. It's right along to the left is the Belize River, probably 80 yards from the house. And so just a beautiful setting there, really nice and green and lush. And they built this house, no electricity, and no running water other than, river water. And I mean, they have running water, but it's river water and not water to drink. So, they live off the grid. When I go to Belize, I like to experience the culture, and so I'm the last one looking for a McDonald's when we come home. This was the first morning I like to go to town and buy pupusas or something for breakfast. This was the pupuseria, the fast food, although it wasn't very fast. We were working at Jansen's, and he heard something. He said, I think I hear a howler monkey. So we went out into his woods, and sure enough, there's a monkey up there. You can barely see him, but he was climbing around in the trees. That was a little unusual. They don't often have that. Lunchtime, everybody has to eat, and I like to hit Rodriguez finger-licking chicken. So they have some really good food. Johnny and I, we were down there 3 years ago. We hit up the barbecue joints pretty often. One day we took the family, went over to Spanish Lookout, ate there at a little cafe, and then went to get ice cream at Western Dairies. So the picture on your right there is in Spanish Lookout at the Russian Mennonites. They have a dairy processing plant. And in Spanish Lookout, I didn't mention that, but it's like a totally different country. When you drive into Spanish Lookout, I mean, the Mennonites, they have paved roads, which the rest of Belize does too, but years ago they had paved roads. And I just remember the first time we drove in there, I mean, the houses in general are less than desirable, most of them, throughout Belize. But when you drove into Spanish Lookout, the tire store was total glass building. I mean, the outside was all glass. I mean, it looks far out compared to most of our general stores around here. It was really uppity. So anyhow, this was a dairy processing plant. They serve ice cream. The building is all air-conditioned inside, which is unusual, but very welcome place to cool off. So we always like to go there to get ice cream. This was a picture Sunday morning. I gave a testimony after we came back. There was a visitor there, that young man beside me. He's the one he said, I used to go to school here. And so I was asking him who all the staff have been, and he couldn't remember. And finally he came up with Mr. Vanson. Mr. Vanson was my teacher. And so I said, I go to Vanson's church. Let me take a picture. So Wilmer, am I right? Is it? Wilder. Okay, so when Kendra and Vanson were down there, and Lyles, right? You would remember him. And then that's a picture of Sunday morning. They had communion, and so we were able to be there. That's Lewis preaching. He's the Spanish fellow. So that Sunday, both churches came together for communion. So Lewis was preaching, and that Sunday, Danny was up front interpreting to everyone because he's preaching in Spanish. We did decide to go to the coast the one day. I had personally maybe been there once years ago with Adrian's family, and that wasn't a very good experience. I think I preached about that in a message, maybe one of my first messages about going to the coast. But anyhow, this in February, we went to the coast, and it was just beautiful. That's an hour and a half from the mission there, so pretty close. Here's a picture of the market, San Ignacio Market. This was last fall when we were there with Myron Zimmerman and his wife Cheryl. That's them standing in front of the market. And then we always enjoy going to the stand there to eat our breakfast. Quesadillas, burritos, and pupusas for breakfast. So a little different than what we normally eat. And then we did some work too. This is at Jansen's house. We stained his house, and he has a swimming hole down there at the river. He's got a rope swing that they swing out over the river and drop into the river. And his steps that he had cut out of the dirt kept washing out. So we built some wooden steps there to try to hold the dirt a little bit. So that's all I have tonight. I will, maybe I'll open it. Are there any questions that you may have, or maybe corrections in my beginning theology there of when the mission started? Maybe somebody thought of something. If you have any questions, why speak up. There you go. Not Scotland. Thank you. Yeah. So, Mr. Craig has been principal for years, and that has, I guess we feel like it's maybe too much to be principal and a full-time teacher plus leading the mission. And so we were looking for an older couple to go down. So Wendell's committed to go down. They'll be administrator and be in the main house there by the school. Tim and Sarah are going to stay. He'll be teaching in school. And then a couple from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Daniel and Sarah Kaufman, are going down. He's been teaching at the Weavertown School, so he'll be teaching at our school, and he has interest in being principal. And Hudell, because of his age, we assumed he's probably not going to want to be principal very long. And so we asked him if he would be principal for about the next year or two and help train in Daniel. And so right now we have extra staff because of that. And so Daniel is coming on board teaching and going to be assistant principal. Hudell will be principal this year and help train Daniel. And then we're hoping in a year or two that Daniel would feel comfortable taking on that responsibility. So we were looking for another house, and we've often been told it's hard to rent a house down there. We were praying about that, and we called Tim Bowman down there and just asked if he would keep his eyes open for a house. And in probably 2-3 weeks' time, he called us. He said, there's a house. It's 3-minute walk from school, just up behind the main house, and it's fully furnished. And this thing is for rent. And so all along I was thinking, well, if we rent a house, how are we going to furnish it? We're going to have to buy all these beds and stuff, and we may only have it for a year. If Tim and Sarah would happen to go home, we'd probably go back down to 2 couples. And so by having it fully furnished, we're going to have to add some kitchen items, but for the most part, beds and everything are there. So yeah, it's just out the back gate and up the hill somewhere, about 3-minute walk. So I think Tim and Sarah are going to be moving to that house because it's smaller, and Daniel and Sarah, 2 Sarahs, Daniel and Sarah will be living at the house in town because they have several children. So yeah, pray for them. Daniel and Sarah have 2 girls, and she's pregnant, and they're flying down in July, and she's due in September. So they were a little nervous about that, but we told them Vansons have done it. Belizeans have babies all the time. So anything else? All right, thank you for your time.